I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, the homies? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again for another UFC full card breakdown and predictions video. This one's going to be RDA versus Paul Felder, stepping in on 5 days notice. This guy is a legend. Before we move into the breakdowns, the predictions, all of that good stuff, make sure you smash the Hamzat button. A few people last week was asking, yo, what's the Hamzat button? You know what the Hamzat button is. It's the like button. Smash it. Let's go, boys. Let's get into the breakdowns. First fight, we have Don'Tale Mayes versus Roku Martinez. And we're going to start with Don'Tale. So Don'Tale comes into this fight 0 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a striker. Don'Tale is now 0-2. Can't really afford to lose another fight. Luckily for him, this will be the easiest competition he's fought to date. Don'Tale has been submitted in both of his UFC fights. Garnet was able to outmatch him on the feet. Ended that fight with a heel hook, really impressive. Rodrigo Nascimento, as we know, is a jiu-jitsu practitioner who was also able to get it done on the mat. Don'Tale Mayes has, slightly improved over time. His cardio has got better. You definitely saw that in the Garnet fight. But, man, like I said, he's 0-2 at the moment. He really can't afford to lose another fight. The opponent, Martinez, comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Debuted against Romanov. That fight went exactly how most of us predicted. Martinez was taken to the mat and basically smashed up until the point the referee stepped in. Both of these fighters are getting a better matchup than their previous matchups, so that's going to be interesting. I do believe this fight is mainly contested in a kickboxing setting. Martinez is going to be the guy that he's just swinging bombs at Don'Tale, whereas Don'Tale, I believe, will look to utilise more footwork, look to be more technical. Maybe take the experience against Garnet and try to replicate a similar performance with his footwork. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Don'Tale Mayes via decision. My numbers would be Don'Tale -170, Martinez +140. And the actual numbers, we have Don'Tale Mayes coming in -220, -240. Martinez returning close to +200. I would say that line is a little bit out of place, but Don'Tale Mayes does have a good size advantage in this fight. And like I said, this will be his easiest fight to date, but Martinez also getting an easier matchup than his debut. So yeah, I wouldn't price Don'Tale -240, but I can kind of understand why he's a decent favourite. Alright, first prediction made. That's the first favourite. Second fight, we have Tony Gravely versus the Freitas. And we're going to start with Tony. So Tony comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Debuted against former UFC fighter Brett Johns. That fight didn't go to plan for Tony Gravely. Yes, he was able to get a few takedowns here and there, but ultimately, the conditioning of Brett Johns was more than enough to compete in a grueling grappling contest. Tony is primarily a wrestler, and quite a good one too. The opponent, the Freitas, comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler too. However, Freitas is a jiu-jitsu grappler, not a wrestling grappler. If we look at the fights Freitas has had so far, I don't think we can be disappointed. I don't think we can be too impressed either, in all honesty. Grappler versus grappler, wrestling versus jiu-jitsu. There's a very good chance that the wrestler is able to take down the jiu-jitsu fighter, but from there, it should get pretty interesting, because Gravely finds himself in a couple bad positions on the mat. So if Freitas can find the back of Tony Gravely, or even find an arm from the guard, he could potentially submit Tony Gravely. The stand-up should be pretty close, but I see mainly a grappling contest because I do see Tony Gravely being able to take down the jiu-jitsu practitioner. Either Tony Gravely wrestles his way to a close decision, or Freitas is able to at some point find a submission. I'm not confident in either side, but I do have to pick a side. This time I'm going to side with the jiu-jitsu player. So I'm going to take Freitas via submission in round number 2. My numbers would be square, Freitas minus 110, Gravely minus 110. I know more of you guys are going to be on Tony, and I'm here to play both sides, right? Tony Gravely will definitely be able to take down Freitas, in my opinion. But from there, that's where it gets interesting. Tony Gravely, he isn't this guy who is going to smash you like Khabib, right? So it all comes down to Freitas. What can Freitas do off of his back? If we look at his career so far, he doesn't look like a Damian Maia on the mat, but Brett Johns by no means a Damian Maia too, and was still able to find the back of Tony Gravely. Now, Brett Johns is more of a wrestler than Freitas, so I would expect Freitas to have a tougher time to find the back, but he's a jiu-jitsu player, so he's going to search for an arm, he's going to search for the neck. It's all down to Tony Gravely. What can he do in full guard? Can he pass to half guard? Can he get to full mount? It's going to be interesting on the mat. I'm going to side with the jiu-jitsu player, but like I said, not too confident in either side. The numbers, we have Freitas plus 120 and Tony Gravely returning minus 140. These numbers are good numbers. Tony should not be a big favourite and Freitas really shouldn't be a big underdog. This line is perfect in my opinion. Randa Markos versus Kanako Murata, and we're going to start with Randa. So Randa comes into this fight 6 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. Primarily a wrestler. Randa is the biggest yo-yo fighter in the UFC. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. She finally broke this pattern recently when she fought Mackenzie Dern. She's now on a 2-fight losing streak. Randa has a lot of experience at the highest level. If you take a look at her resume, there's a bunch of good names on there. For those of you who can remember the fight against Claudia Gadelha, Randa basically chose to strike for 15 minutes. Didn't look good at all in that fight. However, the game plan to strike for 15 minutes may be more useful in this type of matchup than against Claudia Gadelha. The opponent, Kanako Murata, comes into this fight 11 wins, 1 loss as a pro, making her UFC debut. Murata is primarily a wrestler, a very good one too. A strong wrestler. Her kickboxing looks pretty solid too, but we have to remember that Murata isn't kickboxing to actually kickbox. Everything she's doing with her head movement, her footwork, her striking, it's all to set up the takedown. The speed of her entries are really noticeable too. I'll be honest with you guys, originally I was liking Randa Markos in this fight. I just mentioned her resume, her experience. Those 2 things alone was really pushing me towards Randa Markos in this matchup. I was leaning that way. It isn't often that I change my pick, but I am going to change it here. I think Randa has to stop the takedown to win this fight, and I just don't think she will. I mentioned the Claudia Gadelha fight earlier, where Randa looked to keep it standing. I think that game plan will make her gun shy, just waiting to defend that takedown. I think the best chance for Randa Markos to win this fight is to pull off an armbar or something like that. So I'm going to side with the better wrestler in this fight, in my opinion, and that's going to be Murata. So I'm going to take Murata via decision. My numbers would be Murata minus 150, Randa plus 120. Because like I said, originally I was leaning towards Randa, so I'm not going to price her out ridiculous numbers. I'm going to give her a chance. Her jiu-jitsu is somewhat decent. Her experience, very good experience. So to say she can't pull off that submission, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. I do think she's going to search for submissions if she's taken down, but That's the path to victory I believe Randa has, because if she uses that game plan of I'm going to strike, keep it on the feet, it kind of makes her gun shy. And I think if she's gun shy, Murata is going to get that takedown. The actual numbers currently, we have Murata minus 175, Randa plus 150. Can't argue too much, my numbers aren't exactly far from that. But be sure to let me know who you're taking below, guys. Are you taking the newcomer or are you taking the veteran yo-yo fighter? Let me know below. Alright, fight number 4, we have Louis Smolka versus Jose Quinonez. And we're going to start with Smolka. So Smolka comes into this fight 7 wins, 7 losses inside the UFC. Smolka was cut from the UFC a few years ago, made it back to the big time back in 2018. Smolka has a lot of experience. Can't exactly say he's evolved much since being back. We do have to acknowledge though, the striking clinic against Ryan McDonald. I don't think Smolka has ever looked better in a striking matchup. That fight against Ryan McDonald, beautiful. If Smolka could look like that every time he gets into the octagon, he'd be a much better fighter. But then again, you know, it's Ryan McDonald, right? Ryan McDonald is very different to Matt Chanel. He's very different to Jose Quinonez. What is Smolka good at? He's good at taking you down, using his grappling. His striking, you know, like I said, it's never looked better than it did against Ryan McDonald. Can he do something similar here? I'm not too sure. Jose Quinonez comes into this fight 5 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a kickboxer. Quinonez is one of these guys who loves to stay on his bike, kick and move, kick and move. It's one of those styles that you really have to dominate against to find success. For example, Nathaniel Wood choosing to wrestle, Sean O'Malley choosing to beat Quinonez at his own kicking game. Quinonez by no means a high level striker, but his style is what keeps him fighting at the highest level. Who's the better grappler in this fight? I'd say Smolka. But will Smolka have success in keeping Quinonez down the way Nathaniel Wood did? I'm not too sure. I see primarily a kickboxing fight, and one big difference in that type of fight is the speed. I believe Quinonez is quite a bit quicker than Smolka. So purely for those reasons, I'm going to take Quinonez to basically implement his style of kick and move for 15 minutes. So the pick is going to be Quinonez via decision. My numbers would be Quinonez minus 130, Smolka plus 100. Because like I said, Smolka does have good experience. His striking against Ryan McDonald was impressive. Can he replicate that? I don't think so, but I wouldn't be too surprised. Could Smolka hold down Quinonez? Can he take him down, use his grappling? I wouldn't say yes, I wouldn't say no. I'd honestly price it a very close fight. The actual numbers we have at the moment, we have Quinonez plus 110, Louis Smolka minus 130. So yeah, I'd reverse it. I'd put Quinonez minus 130, Smolka plus 100, plus 110. But a lot of people favouring Louis Smolka here. It's fair. It's a fair fight. It's a very close matchup, right? On paper, it's difficult to predict who's going to look good in this fight. For me personally, I think we're going to get primarily a kickboxing battle. And if we do, I think Quinonez is going to implement that style of kick and move, stay on my bike. I'm starting to see a bit of a pattern here, guys. We've gone favourite, underdog, favourite, underdog. Is the pattern going to continue? Alright, Alex Morono versus Rhys Mckee. And we're going to start with Alex. So Alex comes into this fight 6 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Not really sure what Morono is best at. I'd say grappling if I had to pick. Considering he's been put out by Nico Price and Khaos Williams in quite devastating fashion. Morono is at his best, in my opinion, when he's on the mat. He doesn't choose to wrestle too much, if at all, but when he finds himself on the mat and he's using his jiu-jitsu, he looks really good down there. I'm not saying Alex can't strike though. You only have to go back and look at his fight against Max Griffin to see that head kick. The man can kickbox too, but in my opinion, if he just chose to wrestle a little bit more, just chose to find himself on the mat a little bit more, I think that would go a long way for Alex Morono. The opponent, Rhys Mckee, comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Debuted against the smasher, Khamzat. Make sure you smash that Khamzat button. Rhys was basically a sacrifice in that fight. Never really had a chance whatsoever. But you have to admire the fact that he took the fight, you know? I think he himself probably knew there's not much chance here, but that got him to the big time. It got him to the UFC. He took that fight. You have to admire that from Rhys Mckee. Rhys has some pretty good jiu-jitsu. His kickboxing isn't bad at all either. But I do see Rhys being way more dangerous at 155. His height and reach is pretty good for 170. But he doesn't look like he has much power at this weight class. The best path to victory for Rhys would most likely be to keep this fight in a kickboxing setting. Whether he can do that or not, that's another question. I think Alex Morono, more than likely, is able to take down Rhys Mckee. From there, I expect Alex to use his jiu-jitsu, maybe even rain down with some ground and pound the way Khamzat did. My prediction is going to be Alex Morono via submission in round number 1. My odds would be Alex minus 200, Rhys Mckee plus 170. Now, like I said, Alex Morono doesn't wrestle that often, but when he finds himself on the mat, man, this guy has good jiu-jitsu. It's clear to see his jiu-jitsu, very high level. So I would like to hope that Freitas MMA... Oh man, again this week. I would like to hope that Freitas MMA chooses to have Alex Morono go in there with a good, strong game plan. And that game plan, in my opinion, should be to take down Rhys Mckee. Now, the actual numbers currently, we have Alex Morono minus 180, minus 190. Rhys Mckee coming back plus 160, plus 170. If this fight stays kickboxing, I think that line should be way closer. If Alex Morono chooses to kickbox and chooses to wrestle, mix it up, now I'm putting Alex Morono close to minus 200. Let me know who you're taking below, guys. Ashley Yoder versus Miranda Granger. This is genuinely one of the biggest pick'ems of all time. We're going to start with Ashley. So Ashley comes into this fight 2 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. Ashley is primarily a grappler, I would say. Hasn't had much success with her striking as of yet. Against Mackenzie Dern, her boxing looked pretty okay, but that's purely because Mackenzie Dern was looking to grapple. She's a grappler. I think it's fair to say Ashley is at her best when she's on the mat. She's coming off a loss to Randa Markos where, again, you know, her best work came on the mat in that fight. On the feet, you know, it's not like she was smashed on the feet, but nothing to offer. You know, she's catching air with her jabs, not really damaging the opponent with her punches. 2-5 in the UFC, not much success with her striking. Like I said, Ashley Yoder really needs to show something in this fight. The opponent, Miranda Granger, comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler too, I believe. Had a good debut win against Hannah Goldie. The follow-up fight, not so good. Completely out-grappled by the Brazilian Amanda Lemos. This really is a tough prediction to make. Miranda Granger still evolving in the game, still becoming a better striker, fight by fight. Ashley Yoder, like I said, doesn't really look to be improving. Picking the better striker, in my opinion, really is a gamble. Picking the better grappler, most likely a gamble too. This fight really is a pick'em. It comes down to personal preference. Would you rather be on Miranda Granger, knowing she's no better, no worse than Ashley Yoder? Or would you rather be on Ashley Yoder, knowing she's got more experience, but most likely doesn't look any different than her previous matchups? For me, I'm going to take a gamble. I mean, anyone picking on this fight is taking a gamble. For me, I'm going to take Miranda Granger. But like I said, no real confidence in either side. And if we're predicting the fight to be a complete pick'em, the numbers have to be that too. -110 each side. Current odds, we have Miranda Granger -140. Ashley Yoder returning +120. I'm not really too sure what to make of that. I mean, more money going on Miranda Granger, that is my pick. But man, I'm not too sure what to make of that. I mean, Ashley Yoder, I don't think she's going to get blown out of the water. I don't think Miranda Granger is either. I would price it much closer. I would price it -110 each. I really would. Let me know what you think of that line below, guys. I mean, what am I missing here on Miranda Granger? Why is she -140, -150? This is a really difficult fight to predict, man. Alright, the homies. You know what time it is. If you waited to smoke with me, amen. If you've been smoking this whole time, amen. If you're not a smoker, but you enjoy the smoke breaks, triple amen, gang. Someone messaged me on Instagram and they was like, I'm a double amen type of guy myself. I thought that was funny. My Instagram is on screen now. If you want to catch me outside of YouTube, you can do that at UFCLEY. As always, homies, I hope your health is good. I hope everything is going beautiful in your life. Amen to that. Now, before we get into the smoke break message, someone asked me last week, what is the outro song? I actually don't know what that is, but it is on the YouTube copyright-free library somewhere. So, I mean, if you want to waste an hour of your time going through the songs to try to find it, you can do that. But that's where I got the song from. Now, I want to ask you guys, before I get into the message, the motivational message that I want to give off today, I want to ask you, what is your favourite type of music? Because everyone loves music, right? Show me someone who doesn't like music, right? We all love music. Now, it doesn't matter what music you like, because it's you, right? You don't have to like music other people like. Everyone is their own individual person, so we're all going to have our own style, right? But we can all agree that we love music, man. We all love music. Come on, don't lie to me. Now, I know a few of you guys are going to think, okay, he's about to tell me his music. I hope he likes some good music. Like I said, we all have our own style, so some of you guys are going to think, oh man, I couldn't jam to that. I couldn't jam to that. But I know a few of you, you know, you're going to dig my music. So my music, the music that I love to listen to, I'm going to give you a few names. Mac Miller, huge inspiration of mine. Biggie Smalls, Tupac, Big L, Nipsey Hussle. And the one that I really mess with the most, Drake. Now, I know a lot of you guys were like, oh man, Drake? Like I said, we all have our own style, right? I know a lot of you guys was down with that too, right? So leave down below in the comment section the music that you love the most. I don't care what it is, guys. You can love country, right? I don't mind. Leave down your favorite music below. Okay, here we go, guys. Another smoke break. Another moment of tapping into your brains with my philosophy. I love speaking my mindset on these smoke breaks, putting my energy out there for others to take a look at, you know. I really like to do that. Whether you want to channel my energy or not, or disregard it, I love to put my energy out there. Now, I heard something recently, and it really made sense to me, guys. It really did. Now, everything we hear, everything we see, all of us take this information and see this information in a different way. An example would be, let's say I saw someone run past someone. I would say, did you see that guy run past that other guy? Someone else might say, did you see that guy jog past that guy? Another man might say, did you see that guy sprint past that guy? The point I'm trying to make is, we all see and hear stuff differently to each other. Now, we may think in a similar way, but none of us think exactly the same. To finish that point, I'd like to say, there is no wrong or right way of seeing or hearing something. There's your way of seeing and hearing things. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, the quote I heard recently was this: would you rather be at peace with yourself and at war with the world? Or would you rather be at war with yourself and at peace with the world? I'll say it again. Would you rather be at peace with yourself and at war with the world? Or would you rather be at war with yourself and at peace with the world? This meant something to me, guys. This information I was lucky to come across really meant something to me. I instantly understood this information in my way of understanding this information. Now, like I said, we all hear and see things differently to each other. We may see it similar, but we don't see it exactly like each other. There's your way of seeing it. This information told me that if you think in a way that you was taught to think, you may have issues, you may have problems, you may find yourself at war with yourself, but society may look at you and think, we have no problems with you. You're doing it exactly how we told you to do it. Keep going. But the man who is at peace with the world could be at war with himself secretly. I'll ask you guys again. Do you want to be at peace with yourself or at peace with the world? Do you want to be at war with yourself or at war with the world? It's very important to be at peace with yourself, guys. Don't worry about what the world thinks of you. Don't worry about what other people think of you. Don't worry about anything other than finding peace with the only person that you must find peace with. And that's yourself, man. Be at war with the world. Be at peace with yourself, guys. That's the message that I want to send out today. I hope all of you are at peace with yourself. Because you're a one-man army, whether you realize it or not. You're a king, whether you realize it or not. And same with the female listeners, right? You're a one-woman army, whether you realize it or not. You're a queen, whether you realize it or not. Alright, guys? So, amen to that message. I hope that message, tapped into your brains. I hope you took that information in your way of receiving that information. Someone left a comment a couple weeks ago and they said, your channel should be UFC gambling / philosophy addicts, right? And I loved that comment because, yes, we all love MMA. We all love MMA, but man, so many people dig the smoke breaks. So many people dig the philosophy, the mindset, the motivation. And I love that. We're an army and we're growing together. But individually, whether we realize it or not, we are an army by ourselves too. So that's the information I want to give you guys. Keep grinding on your purpose. Keep working on what it is that you're working towards. You will get there. You will get there. I promise you guys. I hope all of you have had a beautiful smoke break. Let's get into breaking down the rest of these fights. Brendan Allen versus Sean Strickland, and we're going to start with Brendan. So Brendan comes into this fight 3 wins, 0 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler, a jiu-jitsu fighter, with some pretty solid wrestling too. Originally supposed to fight Ian Heinisch, but now scheduled to fight at 195 against Sean Strickland. Allen has only been impressive so far. Against Kevin Holland, he was impressive. Against Tom Breeze, he was impressive. I mentioned that I would like to see Allen show his striking ability more. Hopefully we get to see that technical side of his striking. Can he show us that? I hope so. The opponent, Sean Strickland, comes into this fight 8 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a striker. We saw Sean fight just a few days ago against a tough brawler in Jack Marshman. Really good comeback performance for Sean. Even shouting at Jack a number of times, "Why won't you go down?" which really highlights how tough Jack Marshman is. Sean looked like his usual self in there. Forward pressure, good boxing output, just a clean performance returning to the octagon. This is a brilliant matchup. Both of these guys have only been impressive in their UFC careers, so I don't expect either guy to completely dominate. I do, however, expect Brendan Allen to get those takedowns. If he is able to get those takedowns, I believe he goes to work from there. The path to victory for Sean would be to basically replicate what he always does. Keep it standing, use more boxing output than his opponent, basically outbox Brendan Allen. The paths to victory are very different for both fighters, but I'm going to side with my boy, Brendan Allen here. So I'm going to take Brendan via decision. Now, despite siding with Brendan Allen, I do have to keep it real. My numbers are going to be close because this is a great matchup. Sean Strickland should be the better striker. He should be able to score more than Brendan Allen on the feet. So if it stays upright, Sean pretty much runs away with this fight. But if it hits the mat, Brendan Allen, in my opinion, runs away with the fight. So I do have to price the numbers pretty close. Brendan Allen -120, Strickland +110. And the current numbers, we have Brendan Allen -120, Sean Strickland +100. So yeah, pretty much nailed the numbers on that one. A lot of money going on Brendan Allen, a lot of money going on Sean Strickland. You really can't argue with it. This is a difficult fight to be confident on, and it's, a dangerous fight to bet on, but I'm sure a few of you guys are going to lay money on this line, whether you're confident or not. Okay, homies, moving into the next one, we have Antonio Arroyo versus Eryk Anders, and we're going to start with the Brazilian. So Arroyo comes into this fight 0 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Debuted against another Brazilian in Andre Muniz. Can't really speak too highly of his debut. Showed clear signs of a bad gas tank in that fight. For the moments he had the fight standing, he couldn't offer too much in the striking either. However, that fight was a year ago, so I would expect to see Antonio show us improvements in his game, especially in his gas tank. The opponent, Eryk Anders, comes into this fight 5 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. A power puncher and a wrestler. Eryk has shown his own weaknesses inside the octagon too. His inability to cut the opponent off with his movement has always been there. His gas tank also not very good. What does it look like though when Eryk Anders is able to have a good performance? It looks like his knockout against Murata or against Tim Williams. Even in Eryk Anders' losses to Thiago Santos and Jotko, he tries to wrestle a lot in both of these fights. His persistence with the takedown attempts, in my opinion, actually impressive. If he chooses the same game plan here, I do see him having success with it. Antonio's path to victory would be to keep it standing and to strike with Eryk Anders, whereas Eryk's path to victory, in my opinion, would be to wrestle. Very difficult fight to predict, but I'm going to take Eryk Anders to wrestle his way to victory. So the prediction's going to be Anders via decision. My numbers would be Anders -140, Arroyo +110. I wouldn't price Eryk too much because Arroyo has had that year off. he should come back with a better gas tank, more improvements in his overall game. Eryk Anders has always been a powerful puncher. He's the type of guy that you don't want to get hit by too much, you know. He will put your lights out. But I believe if Eryk chooses to grapple, chooses to push Arroyo up against the fence, persistently going for that takedown, I think he could actually have success with it this time. The actual numbers, Eryk Anders minus 130, Arroyo plus 110. So I was pretty accurate again with these numbers. I would give Eryk Anders that slight advantage, but not too confident. So yeah, small favourite for Eryk Anders, small underdog for Arroyo. This makes for a good matchup. Kay Hansen versus Corey Mckenna, and we're going to start with Kay. So Kay comes into this fight 1 win, 0 losses inside the UFC. Debuted against Jin Yun Fry. She had to battle through some adversity in that debut matchup, but she done well. Got herself back on track in that second and third round. Really highlighted her wrestling ability. Kay Hansen is very young in her career still, so she will still make mistakes. Maybe more mistakes than the older fighter would, but it's clear to see this woman has potential in the sport. The opponent, Corey Mckenna, comes into this fight 5 wins, 1 loss as a pro, making her UFC debut. Corey had a brilliant Contender Series performance. She was able to kickbox very well in that fight, even used her wrestling too, which she is most known for. Stayed nice and calm even when the opponent was searching for triangles and armbars. Corey Mckenna is a very young fighter too, just like Kay Hansen. Both of these fighters are only improving. They're only going to get better from here out. Picking the better striker in this fight is a tough one, because both of these fighters prefer to implement their wrestling rather than their kickboxing. Corey Mckenna originated from the gym that I train at, so picking against her feels wrong. But I do have to stay true to myself, and I do have to stay true to my channel. I'm not saying Corey Mckenna can't win this fight. If I had to pick who I want to win, it's Corey all day. All day. But I think Kay Hansen is also a very good wrestler, a strong grappler herself, maybe even a little bit stronger than Corey. I'm going to side with Kay Hansen, and like I said, man, yes, it feels wrong, but I won't be laying any money on this fight. And if you're asking me, okay, who do you think will win and who do you want to win? Those answers are very different. I just think Kay is a little bit more advanced at this point, so I am going to side with Kay Hansen, but man, low key, well, high key, I really want Corey to win this fight. Do feel a little bit wrong picking against her, but like I said, I have to stay true to myself and I have to stay true to this channel, right? I do have to do that. My numbers would be Kay Hansen minus 130, Corey Mckenna plus 100. It is still a difficult fight to predict, but I think Kay Hansen is just that little bit more advanced at this point. You know, 2 years from now, it could be very different. And the current odds, we have Kay Hansen minus 200. I definitely disagree with that. Corey Mckenna coming back plus 180, plus 190. Now, both of these girls are good grapplers, so it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But like I said, man, Kay Hansen, in my opinion, a little bit more advanced. But if I'm choosing who I want to win, you know who that is. Alright, next fight, homies, we have Julian Marquez versus Safarov. And we're going to start with Julian. So Julian comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. Julian has been away for some time now, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he looks making his return. Similar to Sean Strickland, I wonder what type of improvements Julian has made with his time off. Prior to the break, he was just this aggressive guy, the type of guy you didn't want to catch too many punches from. Isn't afraid to push you up against the fence either. Skill-wise, Julian never really stood out to me, but it's his aggression. It's the aggressive approach that makes him a dangerous guy, in my opinion. The opponent, Safarov, comes into this fight 1 win, 3 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler. I believe wrestling over jiu-jitsu is the Russian way. Safarov hasn't done too much in his UFC career so far. He's only had 1 clean performance, and he was basically able to keep taking his opponent to the mat. Could he do that here? I wouldn't say no, but I wouldn't exactly be too confident that he does that too. The pick has to be Julian Marquez. The time away from the octagon is a concern, of course, but just staying on the feet, looking to brawl with Safarov could be enough in this type of matchup. I basically expect the punching power of Marquez to be too much for Safarov. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Marquez via TKO in round number 1. My numbers would be Marquez -180, Safarov +150. And the actual numbers at the moment, we have Marquez, oh my goodness, Marquez -280, -290. Safarov coming in +250, +260. That's insane. I mean, with the time off away from the octagon and coming back nearly -300, that's insane. I am still going to side with Marquez. I'm not going to play Safarov for value because ultimately the value pick is the winner, and I believe the winner is Marquez. Maybe looking at the prop TKO for Marquez would be a good play betting wise, but man, those odds, crazy. Co-main event, we have Abdul Alhassan versus Khaos Williams, and we're going to start with Alhassan. So Alhassan comes into this fight 4 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a dangerous man. Alhassan, for the most part, is a very dangerous fighter. His punching power is second to none. I believe he has some good judo credentials too. We do have to speak about his last fight. Now, I took Lazzez in this fight. A lot of people said to me, man, I just don't see what you see in Lazzez. In all honesty, guys, despite making that pick, I felt that Lazzez would snipe for 15 minutes. But we do have to be honest, right? Alhassan came out and he searched for that knockout like his life depended on it, right? That fight really could have gone a different way if Alhassan didn't empty his gas tank. But we do also have to acknowledge that Lazzez got it done, right? He performed very well in that fight, survived in the first 2 minutes, and after that, it was just his fight to lose. Alhassan would have learnt from that fight. He had a lot of time off prior to that fight too, so I really doubt he's going to come out and look anything like he did against Lazzez. Now, will he still be Alhassan? Yes, he will. The punching power is still going to be the most dangerous part of this man's game. The opponent, Khaos Williams, comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. Speaking about impressive, what can we say for Khaos Williams? His UFC debut went near to perfect. It was perfect. The starching of Alex Morono was beautiful. He has a much tougher fight this time than Alex Morono. Can he replicate his UFC debut? He could well do. Here's the problem though. Alhassan is equally as terrifying as Khaos Williams, if not, probably more terrifying. This fight just screams someone is getting hurt. And most likely in the first round too. My prediction is going to be Alhassan via TKO in round number 1. But make no mistake, guys, it could easily be the other side. My numbers for this would be Alhassan -170, Khaos Williams +140. And the actual numbers we have Alhassan -230, -240. Khaos Williams coming in close to +200. So it's nice to see a lot of faith going into Alhassan despite that loss against Lazzez. You know, a lot of people seeing the truth in that fight, right? Despite Lazzez impressing us, Alhassan basically, you know, he shot himself in his foot. He went out there, used a lot of energy in those first 2 minutes and basically was his own downfall, right? Is he going to do that again here? Probably not. Is he still going to be dangerous with his punches? Absolutely. Main event time, my homies. We have RDA versus Paul Felder, and we're going to start with the Brazilian. So RDA comes into this fight 18 wins, 11 losses inside the UFC. A veteran, a legend, a fighter that pretty much all of us can respect. He had a run at 170, now returning to 155 since Khabib left the weight class. RDA is primarily a striker, conditioning, pretty amazing. The best way to beat RDA, if we look at his losses, it's wrestling. Taking RDA to the mat over and over is by far the best way to stop this man from being successful with his game. The opponent, Paul Felder, comes into this fight 9 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. This man is a hero. He saved the day. Commentator, cornerman, a fighter. Who dislikes Paul Felder? No one. Paul is primarily a Muay Thai striker, tough as nails, most likely eats metal for breakfast, you know, just one of those guys. He's coming off a loss to Dan Hooker in a brilliant 25-minute war. He's now preparing on 5 days' notice for another 25-minute war, this time with a veteran, a legend of the game. I honestly appreciate Paul Felder so much. He didn't have to take this fight, but he's a fan of the sport, not just a nasty fighter, but also a hardcore fan of this game. I believe we do get a 25-minute battle in this fight. Could Paul Felder stop RDA with strikes? He could do it, but I don't see it happening, guys. Could RDA stop Paul Felder with strikes, or even submit him later in the fight? He could, but I don't see it happening, guys. I think this fight plays out mainly on the feet. Both of these guys just looking to damage each other back and forth for 25 minutes. We really could have another Paul Felder 25-minute split decision type of fight. And that's what I'm leaning towards here the most. I have to take RDA. He's in fight shape, and now he has a better matchup than Islam. Against Islam, he was most likely going to be ragdolled. But now I see RDA being able to stand and use his striking. I mentioned earlier that the best way to beat RDA is to wrestle him. I believe Islam was going to do that. Will Paul Felder do that? I don't think so. He isn't really known for wrestling. He's known for being tough as nails. He's known for standing and trading. And I think that type of matchup slightly favours RDA. So for those reasons, I'm going to take RDA via decision. Now, like I said, I think it's going to be close. It could be a split decision for RDA. It could be a split decision for Paul Felder. That's my personal opinion on this main event. I think it's going to be a war. I think it's going to be back and forth. Just both guys damaging each other every second of this fight. This main event is a beautiful main event. It's much better than RDA versus Islam. It's much more competitive now. And I think, we just have to credit Paul Felder so much. Stepping in on 5 days' notice. He didn't have to take this fight, guys. But he's done it. He's a fan of the sport. He's a nasty fighter. And when it's all said and done in Paul Felder's career, we're going to look back at this guy and think, this guy was a real fighter. He really is. My numbers would be RDA minus 150, Paul Felder plus 120. Like I said, I think it is going to be close. I think it's going to be a kickboxing battle. Paul Felder loves that and RDA loves that. So yeah, really excited for this main event. Now the actual numbers, we have RDA getting close to minus 200, which I do disagree with. I think it should be closer to minus 150. Paul Felder plus 150, plus 160. Now, guys, I've seen the poll on the community tab for this fight. 50% of you taking RDA, 50% of you taking Paul Felder. That alone literally sums up this main event, does it not? I mean, how do you pick here? RDA is a brilliant striker. Paul Felder, tough as nails. You know, he's not going to back down from anyone when it comes to striking. We are 50-50 split in the community, and that's okay because this main event is fire. Alright homies, I've enjoyed breaking down all of these fights. As always, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe, and if you want to catch me outside of YouTube, you can do that on Instagram at UFCLEY. Alright homies, peace.